Hello, lovelies. Way back in 2002, hot on the heels of the Munchkins going to Power Gaming and the Slayers going to Rules Lawyers, I wrote the Slayer's Guide to Female Gamers for Mongoose Publishing. You might think that sounds silly and crude. Well, it was a joke. And the target of the joke was actually male gamers. It was very popular at the Eurogencon that year, or possibly the year after. And this was at a time when Austin Powers, Gold Member, and Ali G in the House were the top comedies in the UK cinema at the time. And Gold Member makes the Slayer's Guide to Female Gamers look like fucking 40 towers. So imagine my shock this morning. Imagine my shock when I opened my phone to check for overnight messages and business stuff and all that kind of thing, and found a post on Facebook disparaging the book and me in the comments under it, and even threatening to burn it. Yeah, I would dismiss that as a joke, but people have actually burnt my books in the past, so maybe not. To say that I am tired of this shit is an understatement. I don't think there are words to describe how tired I am of being constantly harangued over things that happened, well, in this case, over 2 decades ago, but usually over a decade ago. Nonetheless, I have tried this morning to express how tired of this shit I am, and this is the best I've come up with. I'm more spent than a drunken Scotsman in a brothel with the exact change for a hand job. I'm as shattered as a window pane in 15th century Prague. I'm more weary of these scurrilous aspersions and defamatory calumnies dripping with the venom of mendacity than a one-legged messenger tasked with delivering terribly bad news to an execution-happy king uphill in a snowstorm while wearing a boot made of lead and an ostentatiously heavy hat. I am so fucking tired of this shit, so I am going to be a salty bitch today.
Oh, never mind. As long as they all bought the book, I'll still get the money. Besides, most Americans can't understand the sophisticated subtlety of British humour.
Alright, first up we have Michael Azzolino, who was a Facebook friend of mine. I've now unfriended him, obviously. Seemed to have completely forgotten that we were Facebook friends. Maybe that's how I ended up being alerted. But he seems to think this is okay. Dredging up a 20-year-old comedy book, treating it as if it's serious, and advocating for burning it. Now, he's probably joking, but I have had my books burned by people, so I think you'll excuse me for not finding that particularly funny, especially since you've gone out of your way to misrepresent me and my work. And it's even been reshared, this post, by someone with an anti-Nazi avatar, and yet who is tacitly advocating for book burning. It's a funny old world we live in it, eh? Then we have Hoodie, a Facebook friend who, again, seems to have forgotten that we're Facebook friends, and I bet is one of the people who would be the first to whine about gatekeeping, and yet says that about this, that anyone who supported such a thing being made has no place at my table. What, people with a sense of humour, people who can read not even particularly subtle subtext. In fact, I will stop that sentence at people who can read and leave it there. God, people disgust me. Then we have Derek White, another Facebook friend, former, now Facebook friend, a chap who claims to be a good Christian fellow, and with whom I have had good faith discussions about things, no pun intended, despite me being a rather ardent atheist, and him being, well, what I thought was one of the least offensive kinds of Christian out there, and yet he joins in with this. despite claiming to be all about forgiveness and understanding, and despite having interacted with me, and despite being Facebook friends with me. I think that's what inverted commas sounds like. Then we have C.A. Suleiman. This one hurt a bit, because C.A. was Me Too'd a while back. I stood up for him on the basis that there wasn't actually any evidence of anything having been done. That didn't stop a whole bunch of other people piling onto him. I reached out to him. I asked for his side of the story before I said or did anything, and gave him an opportunity, if he wanted to take it, to publicise his side of the story, as I have with a lot of people who've undergone not just Me Too'ings, but other public accusations, because I think it's important to give people right of reply. He chose not to take me up on it, but still, you know, I was there extending the benefit of the doubt and backing him up when almost nobody else was, to try and give him an opportunity to offer his side, and yet here we are. It's lack of reciprocity when you do good things for people really, really grips my shit. Next up we have Eric Mona. They should know better, having been subjected to similar stuff in the past, but given the way that he and Paizo have bent over backwards to surrender, given the absolute fucking state of Paizo, I can't say I'm that surprised, but he should know better, and clearly doesn't. And I think back in 1975, the year of my birth, people had better reading skills and would understand that the target of the humour, once again to point this out, is men. Regressive, awkward men. If you're going to be offended by this, what you should probably be offended at is that it's setting its sights on people who were probably on the autism spectrum, if anything. But that wasn't so much of a thing in 2002. I can't say as I'm that surprised to see Alison Saib, or Saibe, up on here, who somehow manages to juggle being non-binary and a militant feminist somehow. I don't know why. I am surprised to see her biting the hand that feeds by going after Mongoose Matt. After all, Mongoose Publishing published her deeply mediocre game Shield Maidens for her, with high production values and everything. And this seems manifestly ungrateful, mean, spiteful, and nasty. Alison, if you keep running into problems with all kinds of people who think you're a shitty human being, then it's quite probable, given the broad spectrum of people involved, especially someone like Matt, who runs one of the most progressive, even-handed, and lovely environments to work in that exists in this industry. If you're biting at him, then I think the problem is probably you, since you're the universal in all of this. So maybe chill the fuck out and stop being a horrible bitch to everybody. Just a thought. Sam Chubb should definitely know better, because, you know, he used to work for White Wolf. White Wolf tended to get accused of all sorts of things that they weren't really guilty of, and misunderstandings and misrepresentations and all the rest of it. Sam was still working on werewolf stuff in 2002. Would it be fair of me to then look at Sam's work and assume that he was in favour of cousin rape and inbreeding, because, you know, those are such big themes of Werewolf the Apocalypse? I don't think that would be particularly fair, would it? Especially if I hadn't even read whatever it was. You know, your former boss seems to like me well enough and agree with my positions on censorship and so on, so maybe, glass houses, stones, shut the fuck up, maybe. Then we have Brian Liberius, who seems to think that anything sexual is necessarily bad. And again, people failing to read into the subtext of how absurd tentacle porn is, and how tentacles became a thing largely as a result of censorship. and all the irony around that. Hentacle was, of course, illustrated in its first incarnation by an Asian woman in its entirety, and was, not unlike Slayer's Guide to Female Gamers, a piss take, and sort of ironic look at all of this sort of thing. It's weird how, I mean, can you even call tentacle sex heterosexuality? But it's weird how they seem to find expressions of heterosexual interest, at least, so utterly disgusting, and not apply the same standard to other forms of sexuality. It's a weird nouveau bigotry, if you will. So why bother being a salty bitch over this? Well, because I'm tired of it. This constant harassment, disparagement, rumour mongering, salting the earth around me wherever I go has been going on for well over a decade at this point. And in this instance, and in other instances, they're reaching back to stuff I did over 2 decades ago, not just over 1 decade ago. This is a psychopathic, sociopathic behaviour. And when you go after things like this, all it really demonstrates is that you can't read. When we created the Slayer's Guide to Female Gamers, it was such an obvious joke that we barely even thought about it. But when they started doing solicitations for putting it into distribution in the United States, we got some pushback from distributors who, without bothering even to read the blurb, had decided that maybe this was a D&D supplement about killing women. Which, fucking obviously, it wasn't. And yet, here we are, decades later, when people have had plenty of opportunity to read through it, people who I presume can actually read, but are willfully misinterpreting what's there to try and say that it's something bad or sexist against women, when, once again, the target was socially awkward, regressive men in the gaming space, and many of the weird attitudes they held about women. Not women. I don't know how that escapes people's notice quite so easily or so much. But why go on about it? Because this keeps happening. And however pointless, however much tilting at windmills it might be, it's important to have the other side out there, to have my side out there, my version of events, my explanation of what this is. Is it the best work I've ever done? No. It's been 20 years since for me to hone my craft to one degree or another. But is it bad? No. Is it regressive? No. But you have to be able to read to understand that. And it's disturbing to me that so many people who are adjacent to or work within the industry can't read, can't grok subtext. A bunch of cunts, quite frankly. So, yeah, I do lots of good, and Rutger Bregman says, come out of the closet, don't be ashamed to do good. Over the last 2 weeks, I have expended, in your phrasing, all the spoons that I have, holding together a couple of friends going through mental health crises. I have run a scholarship for several years for fantasy artists. I've had to slack off the last couple of years because of my health, and because people like you make it nearly impossible to raise money even for good causes. I have nonetheless raised money for wheelchairs, for disabled trans people. I've raised money to help trans people undergo their operations. Olivia Hill turned up in this comment section under the name David Hill again, so I don't know what's going on there. I'm out of the loop. I'm reminded of that joke, you fuck one monkey. That's all people remember you for. Except, in my case, there is no monkey. The monkey is imaginary, for the most part. These people should know better. Many of these are people that I have stuck my neck out for in the past. And people I've given the benefit of the doubt to in the past, people I've defended. I mean, I wouldn't expect Sam Chubb to know I went to the wire defending White Wolf over and over again over the years, but CA should know better. Why bother? Why do I bother? Zang.